Hello and welcome to episode 365 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now joining me on today's episode is the film director Robert Morgan. Robert Morgan is a stop-motion filmmaker who has been described as one of the greatest artists working in film today and has created some of the most viral and important works of the modern era. Today we get to talk all about his brand new film, Stop Motion. It's an incredible horror, it's getting some amazing reviews, and I can't wait for people to see it. And this chat is great, so stick around for that. Now, as you always know, I always use the intro for each and every episode of Mark and Me, just to quickly touch base and talk about my last episode. It only came out a few days ago, and it was with Leah Metcalf, the singer from the amazing band, The Mysterines. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that took the time to listen to the podcast, who've shared it, and all the amazing feedback. It was a great interview and the band are phenomenal, so go and check them out now. But today, it's all about film. It's been a while since I've had a director on. It's been a lot of bands recently, especially with festival season. But honestly, stop motion is where it's at, and I'm so thrilled to get to interview Robert. So I think the best thing to do is to get straight to it. So here's me and Robert Morgan talking all things film. So Robert, thanks for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Robert, what I do with all guests, I've done over 350 episodes now, but it doesn't matter if you're an actor, a director, a musician. I like to take it right back to the start of your career, even before when you were a child. And I wondered if you could remember those early films you saw, maybe at the cinema or at home, that made you fall in love with film.
Yeah, I think it was probably two films. Star Wars, the original Star Wars, which everyone knows about. So I mean, that's probably like an experience that probably like 90% of filmmakers my age, had that experience.
It gets a lot of love, yeah.
Yeah, but the other one was a 1958 B movie called Fiend Without a Face, which because my uncle had this like 8mm projector. Used to be able to buy these reels of like highlights of like the highlights of a film on 8mm.
Yeah.
And he had the highlights of Fiend Without a Face. So it's this 1958 black and white B movie about a bunch of people trapped in a farmhouse being besieged by brains that crawl like sort of caterpillars. And the brains are done in stop motion animation. So that was actually I saw that when I was about 4. And that was my first exposure to stop motion animation as well. Even though I didn't know what it was at the time, I just knew that the brains had a very weird way of moving, which I later understood, oh, that's this technique called stop motion animation. So those two films are probably the two sort of biggest film memories, very early film memories I had.
I mean, that's at a very young age, but I wondered, obviously you're interested and didn't know the technology behind stop motion and filmmaking at that point as such a young child, but at what age did you start to really get an interest in what goes on behind the camera and how they make this kind of process and how it's kind of all put together?
In terms of stop motion
Well,
animation,
in film in general, or stop motion really. I wondered, like, if there was a moment, maybe you were at college or school, that you thought, I want to know more about this. I want to actually start trying to, do this myself.
I think it was like when I was a teenager, I was just consuming a huge amount of horror films.
Yeah.
And I really got into this thing where like I was searching out like forbidden films as well, like the video nasties at that time, which were not available, and obscure like Italian horror films. I just went into this kind of like, this kind of like vortex of just consuming horror, and I was like just completely obsessed with it. And I just thought, and also I was really good at art, so I was like really good at painting and really good at making things, and I really loved horror films. And I thought I found myself basically going to art college, but thinking like, because I didn't know, I came from this small town called Yateley, and I didn't know no one, I didn't know any filmmakers. I didn't know, it felt like so far away of something you could possibly do with your life. But I was good at making stuff, and I discovered that there was a course in Farnham, which was fairly nearby, which did animation, a degree course. So I thought, well, I can go and study animation, and then I can make my paintings and my things that my sculptures move around, and that can get me closer to filmmaking. So that's how I actually got into stop motion. It wasn't like a big dream of mine to be a stop motion animator. It was just I loved films and I could make stuff, so I fell into that.
I'm a big fan of stop motion, and I kind of started to. I'm 42 now, so when MTV used to play actual music videos, obviously the band Tool used to do some really good, strong stop motion music videos, and it made me think, what is this? Because I hadn't seen it much. I remember seeing stuff like Trapdoor as a kid and stuff like that, but this is when I really started to take note of it. And then within the horror community, and this leads nicely to yourself, Basket Case I thought was an absolute masterpiece of filmmaking, and I saw that you did part of the extras for the new release. But that was my introduction, and it's incredible to see that even today, with your new release, it's still being promoted a lot because I worried that, CGI would just completely do away with all stop motion eventually, and I never want that day to come.
Yeah, I think it's I kind of th feel like as we zoom through modern life towards the future, there is more and more and more and more immediate gratification trends that come and go very quickly. And you see it in films, you see it in just this voracious appetite for like now, 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 quick, quick, quick,
Yeah,
dazzle me, impress me straight away. And I think there's an emptiness that I think that comes with that after a while. And I think there's always a feeling of like wanting a deeper experience or something that feels a bit more real or handmade or and just by the very nature of the very peculiar and obsessive nature of it, I think it appeals to some people, it's the idea of stop motion. So I feel like there's recently been, a bit more interest in it because in the horror community because of Phil Tippett, obviously, because of
of
Mad God.
course, yeah.
Um, but I think it's always been there. I think, yeah, like you say, Basket Case has just got some amazingly weird
It's so good.
scenes in it. Yeah, I mean, I'm an absolutely huge Basket Case fan. And yeah, I was fairly I know I always knew that this film would be a bit of a niche film, not just in terms of it's about stop motion, which is a niche art form, although it's kind of got more traction now. It's not an art form that will ever die, I don't think, but
Yeah.
it's a massive mainstream art form. And also the film itself, the kind of vibe and tone I wanted to go for. I know it's not going to be a mainstream horror movie, but so I knew it would be. I never thought it would be like a big mainstream film, but I've been quite surprised by how much um, attention it has got, actually.
Your lead up to this, correct me if I'm wrong, but is stop motion your full first feature length? Because I've seen that previous to that you've done a number of shorts for many years.
Yes, it's my first feature film. Yeah.
Amazing. So was it quite easy to get greenlit because you had a really nice kind of archive of work as a director with the short work, or was it still a struggle to kind of? I've had a lot of people that talk about their first ever big release, and some of their journeys have took years and years of trying to make the project, come to life.
Yeah, this took 10 years.
Okay, wow. You hold the record. I think it was about 8 years previous to another
Well,
director that came on, but wow.
yeah, I mean, I mean, some false starts, getting the script to, correct, finding the producers and getting the script into the best shape probably took about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
Then years and years of trying to get money, getting some money, then not getting the rest. Then right in the middle of all that, or towards the end of all that, the pandemic happened. So that added 2 years
yeah.
to to the thing. Yeah, it's just a huge, marathon of just refusing to give up, basically, that resulted in it finally emerging.
How do you kind of find that resilience and to keep going? Because 10 years is a long time, and incredible that you now see the finished product and it's over the line. But there must have been times when you thought, "Ah, like this, it's never going to happen." Like, how do you keep bouncing back?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know really. Just by just refusing to give up
Yeah,
believing. I mean, I was making other short films in that period as well. I made about 4 or 5 other shorts while I was waiting. I was developing other projects, but it's just having faith, I guess. I knew that the producer wasn't giving up on it, so that was good. Um, yeah, it was just finding the right time and the right place for it.
Do you now have this real hunger within you to now just get on and start your next one now that this one's been finished, all edited, all mastered down and ready for the world to see? Are you now like, give me my next project?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but it takes a while to, you can't rush it. You've got to the idea's got to be right, the script's got to be right. You've got to develop the idea. It's a whole other, you know, um, evolution development period. It's like a sort of a birth or something.
Yeah,
It has to just grow, and it has to, and they do. I mean, some ideas come and go. Some ideas you don't quite you don't quite haven't figured out what the form is yet, on some idea. Like it's just a mood or a feeling or a scene sometimes, and it takes a while. You try a few different stories for it, and then no, that's not quite right. It needs to be a
yeah.
different type of story. That just process just can take a while. But I've been working. I mean, I'm writing another film at the moment, which I started while I was waiting for stop motion. So I've got a bit of a head start on it.
That's good. Are you allowed to talk about any of that, or are you kind of keeping it all under wraps at the moment?
I think the past has told me I've opened my mouth about unmade projects in the past, and it's bitten me, come back to bite me. So I
Yeah.
think it's best to just not talk about them because
No,
so
that's
many
fair. I don't
films
want to
don't
curse
get
it.
made.
Yeah.
It's just like, and it haunts me. It's like I did an interview with Rue Morgue magazine years and years ago, and I mentioned about 5 feature films that I was working on, and like not one of them, they've all died, and it's like that's in print now forever. All these failed things that never happened.
No, no, I respect that, and I don't want to be a curse. So, let's keep it under wraps and come back on when they're ready to talk about,
Yeah,
and then we can
exactly.
do
Yeah.
that. So, I think what interests me about your career is obviously so many years of directing shorts and then doing this full length stop motion. And I wondered, did your mindset go into it as just the same process that you would do for making a short, but just for an hour and 40 minutes instead of a 5 or 10 minute piece? Or did you completely change your mindset and creativity to go into the production of this, knowing it's on such a bigger scale?
I think the main difference is, yeah, it's the bigger scale, and it's the fact that this is mostly a live action film, and so
Yeah,
it had to operate mostly as a live action film, and the most important stuff is actually the live action stuff, even though the animation is vital to it, but it's the character's arc that's the most important thing in the film. So it's really was treated like a live action shoot with extra animation, an additional second animation shoot. So from that perspective, it was approached very differently because it's like I'm working with an actor
yeah,
and a DP, and it's more of a collaboration to kind of steer the performance and get the character right for the whole film. When it came to doing the film within the film stuff, like the actual animation stuff, which we shot later, then that's back to what I would normally do, which is just grabbing a storyboard, grabbing a camera, and just shooting. Some of that was shot in my lounge.
that blows my mind.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think that. I know obviously filmmaking is all about the craft and the editing, and that's where it all happens in the editing suite. But to film a lot of the scenes separately at a completely different time for that stop motion, and then knowing it's going to be kind of dropped in and added into the live scenes. What did you do? Did you kind of obviously you're storyboarding and creating this whole project as a film, but what were you doing in those scenes to kind of know that did you have enough faith and trust in yourself that it was going to work and then when you splice it all together it's just going to gel?
Well, there was 2 phases to the stop motion shoot. There's
Yeah.
all the scenes where there's the animation is interacting directly with the actor. So, for
Yeah.
example, there's a scene where the puppet walks up onto the bed.
Yep.
You know,
I've
uh,
seen the films and it's
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So all that stuff that was shot during that 25-day shoot. So we would shoot the live action plate, and then Andy Biddle, who's a stop motion animator, would come in as a sort of second unit and then shoot just the little bits that were going to interact with the live action stuff. So there's a handful of those shots. Then afterwards, I did all of the film within a film stuff. So all the stuff you see on laptop screens when it cuts into the full screen
Yep.
motion stuff, the stuff where the weird wax puppet runs behind the walls to escape from the Ashman, all that stuff was shot by me later while we were editing the film. And that was actually good because
Amazing.
I was able to see the cut of the film, and then I could sort of sort of steer my animation shoot in order to fit what we were already editing. So it was actually more helpful to do it that way because I could sort of let the film feed into what I was shooting. I could kind of pick up on little movements that Ashling might have done and try and incorporate that into the animation. I knew exactly where the animation sequence would end because I know the cut back into the live action, like when she pulls out the Ashman puppet from the window of the puppet set.
Yep.
I knew, okay, therefore I know that I need to get the Ashman to stand by the window by the end of the shot. Those kinds of things. So it really helped a lot actually to have shot the live action stuff first.
I get a lot of people that listen to the podcast that are either starting very early in their career or wanting to then go down a route of getting into animation or filmmaking. And I mean, persistence is the one thing I've learned from you today, but is there any other advice that you'd like to give to people that are listening that would love to be like yourself and get that first feature out there or start working in the industry that I believe is very hard to kind of break through in?
I mean, it's a cliche, but it is persistence.
Yeah,
That is the thing I think that separates those that end up managing to make something and those that don't. Because if you've got 10 years of waiting around with no money, being told no, it's not going to happen, being told, you know, forget about it, or maybe, but maybe one day, or don't know, and
yeah,
you're seeing other films come out and you're seeing your contemporaries, like, because I had like some some friends of mine as well and contemporaries who were also trying to make films, and then some of those guys, they get their films made and you don't. It's very, very easy to be disheartened and give up.
yeah, massively.
So I think if you just don't go away, and also I'll just keep making films as well. It's like I kind of imagine, like, when I'm dead, I kind of feel like, well, I've never stopped making film. Even in that 10-year period when I was like waiting for the feature, I was still making short films. So I've got about 5 films that I made in that waiting period as well. So I never stopped making films. So
No,
I have a body of work now, that's just there for people to discover. And I think that's something I kind of felt that was quite important. I didn't want there to be a 10-year gap where I just sit around waiting. So to keep just making stuff and keep putting stuff out there and keep refining the craft, trying to find your own niche, your own particular thing that you do that no one else does, and don't give up doing it. And hopefully one day, you might make something. And even now, it's like, okay, I've made this feature. It's like, that's not the end of it. It's like, okay, now I've got to make another one, because it's like you don't just make one and then, like, right, mission done. There are
no.
so many things I want to do, and it's like, you need to just carry on doing it and hope you get to make more.
I do wonder how many ideas you've probably got in your head that you've done so many shorts. Are you constantly writing? Are you always thinking, right, this could be my next project? I've done stop motion, but there's 5 or 6 more stories I could tell through a short and I could do them as soon as possible, you know?
Yeah, there's short ideas and there's feature ideas. I mean, I did a music video over Christmas and New Year, for example. So I do
Yeah.
bits and bobs. But yeah, I mean, I've got tons of ideas.
I
There's just
want to
not enough
see
time.
I want to see more stuff that you do with extras as well, especially working with Arrow and people like that. I'm always fascinated with filmmakers that get involved in these things and share their love and ideas for the films that they've, shaped them and had
Yeah,
such influences on them. So hopefully we get to see you work a lot more on stuff like Basket Case and more extras like that.
yeah, yeah. That was fun doing that basket case short.
If they're listening or Second Sight, we should get you involved as soon as possible. But our time's nearly coming to an end, and what I do on the podcast is I try and keep it as fresh as I can by asking the guest that comes on to choose a song that means a lot to them. And why I ask this is because when the podcast is edited and ready for the world to listen to, the music that plays out after the edited interview is chosen by the guest. So I am putting you on the spot today, Robert, but is
Yeah.
there a song that means a lot to you that comes to your heart, maybe before any other? Maybe there's 100 songs in your head at the moment, but it's always interests me why you think that song probably came before any other.
Gosh, that's difficult. Because I mean, does it have to be a song or can it be a piece of music?
Piece of music, a score, a soundtrack, anything you like. Some people have picked a 20-minute piece of instrumental music score. Not ideal when the podcast is only 20 minutes long, but
Yeah, yeah.
you are allowed to choose whatever you want.
Um,
I know I'm cruel putting you on the spot, but it's I
May
always
take a while. Uh, oh, actually, no. I'll say um, just for something really like operatic
yep.
and melodramatic. Uh, the Ecstasy of Gold by Ennio Morricone from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Wow.
That piece of music. You know that piece of music?
I do. I absolutely love him. I love all his stuff he did for John Carpenter's The Thing and all
Yeah,
the
yeah,
other
yeah,
stuff. Absolute,
yeah.
genuinely an absolute genius.
Yeah.
And I can already hear that in my head now, and I know it's going to be really, really beautiful to end the episode on. So,
Yeah.
pretty
It
epic.
might just make people just cry
I was going to
and
say it's quite an epic end, but
yeah, it's an amazing piece of music.
unbelievable. Our time comes to an end, but I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. And I've said this to many guests recently. I didn't realize how small the industry is, even though I've been doing this podcast 7 years. There's going to be a Fright Fest or a Horror Con or something. I'm sure we'll meet again. And
Yeah.
you're more than welcome to come back on whenever you like to talk about any future projects. And I'm really, really excited to see what people think next month when the film comes out. And I love stop motion. I thought it was brilliant. I loved all the character design. I loved the way it looked. And I've read some early reviews and it's been really positive. So I'm really excited to see what people think.
Cool. Thank you.
Good luck with all the rest of the press, and I will speak to you soon.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and the amazing Robert Morgan. What a great guy. So honest, so open. He's been there and worked on stuff like The Cats and Hands, Bobby Yeah, the ABCs of Death 2, so many great shorts. He's even had his features and stuff worked on with Arrow for the release of Basket Case, which is one of my favourite horrors out there. And the guy's just going to get bigger and better. So if you do get time to go and watch Stop Motion, it's out now on digital, DVD and Blu-ray. Let me know what you think in the comments on all my social media because I love it when people discover films and albums and artwork because of this podcast. It really means that I'm doing my job properly. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, as always, everyone, please take that time just to hit a couple of buttons on your social media page, share the episodes on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I make it so simple that if you go on markandme.com, there's links on there to take you to these, and it honestly goes a long way. You know this by now. This podcast doesn't make money. I'm a one-man team. I don't have a marketing department or a social media manager. It's all me. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share the episodes. Also, I do have a Patreon account. I understand that money's tight for everyone, but the podcast needs money to host on sites like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and for me to travel the country to go to these film premieres and basically get these interviews for you guys at home. So if you do enjoy the podcast and want to kind of go that little extra mile, for everyone that signs up on Patreon, you get a welcome pack, which includes stickers, a badge, a monthly newsletter, and podcast episodes that are called The Lost Tapes, which are starting this month, which are exclusive episodes just for you guys to say thanks for supporting me on Patreon. Now, before I go, let's give a quick shout out to the sponsor of the podcast, Richer Sounds. If you're in the market for a home cinema surround sound system, TV, headphones, Sonos, hit up richersounds.com or visit any of their local stores. They are truly the best out there. I say this again and again, but things have never been busier. I'm going to another music festival next week, which means loads of interviews for you guys at home. Also, an episode will be probably coming out over the next few days, every day, because it's absolutely hectic. And I truly believe my biggest interview I've ever done is only a few days away. So, until then, look after yourself, go and see Stop Motion, take care, and I'll speak to you all very soon.